Gavel falls on the guard inside Abubakar Malami's 213 billion legal siege. Welcome to the Papyrus Global Television. The courtroom is quiet, but the quiet is loaded. Not the silence of neutrality, the silence of reversal. Abubakar Malami's son once filled courtrooms like this with consequences. Judges waited for his filing. Investigators paused for his opinions. Accounts were frozen or unfrozen just at his word. No paper documentation needed. Now he stands where defendants stand, listening to a judge read conditions to him. No adversary role, no difference, just compliance. No memos, no legal opinions that freezes accounts or reinterprets the Constitution. Just a former Attorney General standing where defendants stand, answering to a system he once personified. In Nigerian politics, fall from powers are rarely so literal. This is the sharpest irony Nigerians' power produces. The law, once wielded as an instrument, has become a destination. The gavel Malami once evoked to restrain others now measures him. The reversal is not symbolic. It is procedural, humiliating in its ordinariness. In a system where former power holders often hover above consequences, Malami's presence in court represents something rarer. A man being processed by the same machinery he once directed. This moment, however, did not begin in 2026. What began this year was not Malami's crisis, but its exposure. The conduct under scrutiny stretches across nearly a decade, much of it during his tenure as Nigeria's chief law officer. What changed was not the paper trial, but the political and institutional will to follow it all the way to its source. For 8 years, Malami sat at the intersection of law and power as an Attorney General of the Federal Republic of Nigeria from 2015 to 2023. And to understand the scale of this fall, one must understand who Malami was in office. As Attorney General of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, he was not merely a legal advisor to the president. That is President Muhammadu Buhari of the blessed memory. He was a central node in Nigerians' power architecture. His office shaped the tempo of anti-corruption enforcement, determined which case advanced and which stalled, and issued legal interpretation that redefines executive authority. Malami's opinions influenced everything from asset recoveries to limit of security agency powers. Within Abuja, he was regarded as a lawyer who understood that law in Nigeria does not operate in isolation. It moves with politics, timing, and restraint. He was also a custodian of secrets. Files passed through his desk that never reached open court. Disputes between agencies ended on escalated based on his counsel. To allies, he was methodical and protective. To critics, he was accused of selectively legalizing impunity. Either ways, Malami's authority rested on one fact, and it was that he stood between the state and the law, interpreting each to the other. That gatekeeping role made him indispensable and, for a time, untouchable. He understood the system because he helped to run it. That is what makes the scale of the current allegations so jarring. According to EFCC, Malami and his immediate family his wife Asebe Bashir, and son Abdulaziz allegedly operated a network of companies and accounts used to move and conceal approximately 8.7 billion naira in suspicious funds. This is not framed as a loan official scheming quietly on the side. It is presented as a family enterprise, deliberate, layered, and sustained. The moral weight of that framing matters. In Nigerian power culture, wealth accumulated by office holders is often rationalized as personal reward or political insurance. But when spouses and children appear not as beneficiaries, but as alleged participants, the story darkens. It raises uncomfortable questions about inheritance, not of wealth, but of values. That is, of course, when proven true. What does it mean when the next generation learn power not as service, but as entitlement? When family in itself becomes the vote? The FCC filing describes shell companies, proxy account, and transactions designed to blur origins. It points to firms like Metropolitan Autotech Limited and Metak Hotels Limited, allegedly used to warehouse funds and legitimize movement. One allegation in particular has drawn scrutiny because of what it reveals about method rather than scale. Prosecutors allege that 600 million naira in cash, described as proceeds of unlawful activities, was deposited directly with a bank and used as collateral to secure a loan. In simple terms, the family is accused of using cash of questionable origin not to spend openly but to unlock former credit, converting illegal funds into bank backing legitimacy. To investigators, this is not a casual transaction, but a classic laundering technique. Dirty money repurposed to generate clean financial instrument, protected by credibility of the banking system itself. It is an allegation that suggests planning, financial sophistication, and a deliberate effort to blur the line between legality and concealment, and it is particularly symbolic because it is a money allegedly too compromised to explain, yet powerful enough to unlock former credit. This is how illicit wealth often survive, by learning the language of legitimacy. But the criminal charges, serious as they are, pale beside civil forfeiture case that followed. In January 6, 2026, a federal high court ordered the interim forfeiture of 57 properties allegedly linked to Malami, valued at approximately 213 billion. The figure is staggering, not just for its size, but for what it implies. This is not excess explained by one lucky investment or pre-office property. It suggests accumulation of a scale that challenges the credibility of Nigerian public service wage structure in itself. The property spans Abuja's most exclusive districts, commercial hotels, land holdings, oil tankers, and educational infrastructure in Kebbi State. Together, they read less like personal success and more like an alternative economy, one that thrives quietly alongside state. The courts demand that Malami'S show cause to tell how such access were acquired. It is not procedural housekeeping. It is a direct confrontation with the mythology that power explains everything. But then how did Malami get caught? That question exposes the system as much as the man. This was not a dramatic whistle-blowing moment. It was the slow convergence of post-Buhari political realignment, enhanced financial intelligence tracking, and an anti-corruption agency under pressure to prove relevance beyond rhetoric. Once Malami left office, the informal shield thinned. Bank trials that once led nowhere began to lead somewhere. Transactions that were once too sensitive to interrogate became merely suspicious. The fall was not sudden. The protection was. There is also a political subtext that cannot be ignored. Malami was a central figure in the previous administrative legal architecture. His prosecution raises the perennial Nigerian question: is this justice or selective reckoning? The answer may be uncomfortable in its ambiguity. It is possible for a case to be legally sound and politically convenient at the same time. What matters is whether the process holds, not just whether the target falls. Now on a bail with his passport seized and movement restricted, again rearrested, Malami'S world has contracted sharply. Kuje's Correctional Center, however briefly, it's now part of his reality and it carries its own symbolism. For decades, Nigerian elites have treated incarceration as an abstraction, something that happens to others. The image of a former Attorney General passing through those gates punctures that illusion. And to think that he determines who goes there and who doesn't is the reason why this documentary has become very serious. The inclusion of his wife and son in the dock deepens the reckoning that this is no longer a solitary fall. It is a reputational collapse. In elite Nigerian society where family names functions as political capital, such exposure lingers far beyond court deeds. Even acquittal will not restore the old certainty. The social exile has already begun. When allegation of corruption trails a minister or a legislator, the damage is often political. When they trail a former Attorney General of the Federal Republic of Nigeria or any republic for that matter, the damage is existential. The Attorney General is not just another public official. He is legal conscience of the state, the final interpreter of lawfulness within the executive, and the custodian of prosecutorial discretion. If that office is compromised, the question extends beyond guilt or innocence to something more coercive. How many decisions made in the name of law were shaped by private interest? Malami'S case forces an uncomfortable national reckoning. As AGF, he oversaw asset recovery, anti-money laundering coordination, and legal approval for some of the government's most sensitive actions. The same institution now alleging that billions were laundered through shell companies once operated under his legal supervision. Even if every charge were to collapse in court, the mere plausibility of such allegation fractured public trust. The law cannot convincingly police corruption if its chief interpreter is suspected of masterminding its invasion. The implication rippled backward as much as they move forward. Legal opinions issued during Malami'S tenure, once treated as authoritative, now face quiet re-examination in legal circles. Prosecutorial decisions not taken, investigation delayed, and settlement approved acquire new shadows. In a system already strained by selective justice, this uncertainty is destabilizing. There is also an international dimension. Nigerians' credibility is cross-border asset recovery and anti-corruption cooperation depends heavily on the perceived integrity of its legal leadership. A former AGF defending unexplained wealth weakened morals authority in ongoing negotiation with foreign government and financial institutions. It is difficult to demand accountability abroad while explaining excess at home. Perhaps the most damaging thing is the cultural message. The Attorney General is meant to embody the idea that the law stands above power. When that symbol collapses, it reinforces a dangerous belief among citizens that legality is merely a temporary condition applied under one is strong enough to transcend it, and this is how cynicism hardens into political culture. Malami's prosecution, therefore, is not just about recovering asset or securing conviction. It is a referendum on whether the Nigerian state can confront corruption as its intellectual and institutional core, not just as its political ages. The gavel has not finished falling. Trials will proceed. Defense will be mounted. Outcomes remain uncertain. But something irreversible has already occurred. A myth has fractured. The myth that proximity to power guarantees permanent immunity. In a system long defined by who you know and how long you can wait, Abubakar Malami's legal siege suggests a fragile but significant shift. That the law, however late, may still knock. And when it does, it rarely knocks only once. What lesson can we learn as power holders today, knowing that tomorrow will come, and certainly it will come in different colors? This has been the Papyrus Global Television.